Greetings and welcome to Office Hours. If you are new here and you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, head over to officehours.global. We answer your questions 7 days a week. So if you're watching the replay, feel free to head over to askofficehours.global to submit your questions. And we typically take a day or two and then we get to them on our show. And to our producers, go ahead and upvote or downvote the questions because this show is driven by you. And speaking of show on this holiday, you know what, Alexander, let's get into it.
First question this morning is from Douglas Carmichael. I'm watching the Paralympics opening ceremony, and it starts with a pre-recorded segment and cuts to the live elements. Since the pre-recorded segment is not NBC-specific, how would they deliver it to all broadcasters involved? EVS playout?
Chris?
Well, knowing that there's hundreds and hundreds of EVS units that are in play at the Olympics, I think that would be a pretty good educated guess that's how they're delivering it. And then, the actual mechanism is the same way they're delivering cameras. So, yeah.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, for home office video conferencing, will you discuss the pros and cons of pavotubes, Elgato or similar, key lights, softboxes or diffusion boxes, and larger LED panels? Thanks.
CJ.
So when you have a whether it's the pavotube or a small box, the smaller that light source is, kind of the harder those shadows are going to feel. And I think you may have heard us say that it feels sourcey before. The bigger that you get that light source, the more soft and flattering it's going to feel. And when you have those pavotubes, they're great because they're so small. But if you have just one of them right above your computer, you're going to find that just makes you look like you're kind of staring into the sun. So it'll behoove you to get a couple of them and kind of place them around. The other thing that's worth mentioning on the pavotubes is that they're a little finicky with power. They want to be plugged into the USB-A to USB-C power and into that little, like if you have one of those old iPhone 5-volt bricks or 5-watt bricks, that's what it wants to be powered by. If you try to overpower it, it just won't charge because it doesn't have the resistors. And then you'll be thinking, oh, my light's broken. But yeah, that's my note on the pavotubes.
Nigel?
Yeah, so the first part of this question says for a home office. So I think one should think about, is this a home office or a home studio? And if it's a home office, then you want something that is fairly easy to turn on and off. You want something that's simple that maybe doesn't overpower the room. If it's a home studio, then the biggest, softest light boxes probably will be better. You end up looking as pretty as CJ and stuff if you get big. If it's really an office, then on and off is probably pretty important. Ease of use is probably important. And what I use is the Elgato equipment, the key lights and stuff. And they're all on my Stream Deck. They go on and off. They're very easy to control. They're very easy to integrate into an office environment. I think the pavotubes and things like that are great. And I have some for when I'm on the road. They're very easy to operate. They're very easy to move about. But if it's really a home office and not a home studio, then think about something that's easy to integrate and it's like the Elgato key lights and stuff.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it depends. The pavotube is, like it says, like a fluorescent tube. It's a long tube. It's LEDs. It has batteries in it. And the nature of the light that comes out of it is 360 degrees off the tube. So it's even in a horizontal position, but not a vertical position. So the length of the tube, it throws out light. So it's good for lighting up backgrounds. You can put it up horizontally and keep it out of the shot, or vertically right behind your head and light up the background. It's not as good for lighting people, I think, because it'll eliminate shadows horizontally, like your nose shadow left and right on your face, but it won't get under your eyelids if you have it above, or if you have it below, you'll have vampire lighting because all the light will be coming from one direction below you. So you're going to have that strange vampire light from underneath. So for lighting people, I prefer not to use tube lights. I prefer to use a large panel. The large in vertical, it has a large light source horizontally and vertically, so it evenly eliminates shadows in all directions. So it's good for that. a lot of people, because they're multicolor and you can control them remotely, a lot of people use them as background accents. You can dim them down to where they're just barely on and use them, put them at cattywampus angles in the background and use them as part of your background as a decor element, but not necessarily for lighting things. So that's my 2 cents on pavotubes.
Go ahead, Chris.
I use the Nanlite Compact 68. They're, I don't know, they're yay big. They're big. I have 2 big panels here, and I think they provide a nice soft light. It's for me. I don't know if you could consider this a home studio or a home office. It's where I do work every day, so I guess it's a home office. But for me, these lights provide enough light to illuminate me, but in a way that's not like really bright in my face. So I have these lights on all day long. This is how I work. They provide most of the light for me to do my work, and I like them big soft lights.
And Bill?
The light itself, the emitter, is very important, but also what you put it inside of. If you put it inside of something, everybody's been talking about big soft boxes, which are great, and I use them all the time. But really, the point of this is to place shadows into your scene or into the person that you're shooting. That's what gives a face dimension and that 3-dimensionality quality. If I was lit like a driver's license photo with just 2 big lights coming into a room and my whole face was flat, you end up looking kind of flat. So the goal of lighting for me is to always look how to place shadows to make someone look as nice as they can, potentially. And the other thing I would say is that if you are very clever and you zoom into photos and look at the eyeballs of the people, because your eyeball is reflective, you can typically see the light plot in the room that they're sitting in, and that'll give you a chance to break down, wow, that magazine photo, they look fabulous. Why? Look at the irises of their eyes, and you'll see exactly where the photographer or the crew has placed all those lights to get that look.
And CJ.
And if you really want to be snazzy and you've got your great big box, so here's your great big soft box, you get a little HomeKit outlet, and then you can hit a button and they all turn off. That's what you want for the home office. Easy on, easy off.
And then we've got Guy in the comments here saying it's not just a matter of big soft light, it's about controlling that light. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is asking, discuss body-mounted rigs like chest harnesses or helmet mounts that offer a first-person perspective. Are these ideal for action sports or immersive filmmaking?
CJ?
I mean, it's definitely the best way to get a camera on somebody. I don't know if it's the best way to get a camera on somebody for an action sport, but what you want to think about is how easy is it going to be to watch? A lot of times when somebody is not thinking about the camera shot, they're thinking about doing their sport, and they have a camera on their head or a camera on their chest. The actual shots that we cut to aren't that long because of how much kind of jostling around is going on. So definitely a way to get a camera in there, but it takes a little bit more effort to make it easy to watch.
Jesse?
I'd say that those cameras are ideal for collecting information, like a head-mounted cam for insurance information for a motorcyclist, or a body mount cam for police work. For sports, what you want is a camera operator who's divorced from the actual athlete and is almost as good as the actual athlete and can keep up with the actual athlete, but operate a camera instead of doing the sport that the athlete is doing.
Bill?
Very much agree with what's been said before. It always drives me crazy. Whenever I put a head-mounted camera on, I always get sick of my own footage very quickly because, that little look to the side to check something suddenly becomes a camera move and a swish pan, and it's just hard to watch unless you understand you're operating a camera mounted to your body and are moving in concert like a cameraman. You'll end up with a lot of footage left in the dustbin.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. Head-mounted cameras are always too jerky unless they have a whole bunch of image stabilization built into them of some sort, either a mini gimbal or electronic image stabilization. Just look, if you want to be sick very quickly, look at the movie Cloverfield, all shot with handheld camcorders, or what pretends to be handheld camcorders. So the whole movie is like that, and you can only stand about 30 minutes of it before you're looking for something else to watch.
And when you look at, I like what CJ had said, is like the information, well, like, what are you collecting? So you all touched on sports, but on the filmmaking or even for vloggers, a lot of it is showing information of like, where are we, what's happening, and really bringing in your community into that so that they can be a part of the journey or the day and really building intimacy with your audience. So from a storytelling perspective, that works, but it, as has been said, in bits and pieces. Alex?
Yeah, the other thing to look at is also there are, and I just was trying to find the name of them while we were talking. Let Bill go first, and I'll come right back to me. I think I might have found it. Hold on.
Bill?
Sure. What you're talking about, Liberty, is exactly right. And we used to talk about that in the filmmaking industry. I'm sure they still do, as establishing shots. And they are by nature short. It's that wide shot when the detectives are walking into the building that you'll see for a second and a half, 2 seconds before they go through the door. And that establishing shot gives you a sense of where the character is and the environment that they're interacting with. It's very important, but they can be very short.
Exactly.
And I found it. Yeah. So the other thing you can think about if you're trying to do how-tos, like this is not so much an action camera, but you're trying to do like this is how I cook something or this is how I put something together that I've been playing with is this. This is it's a neck mount. So that goes around your neck and that little magnet snaps onto your phone and you can swing it down. And the advantage of that is that it has a little less movement than your head. It's on your neck, and you can see what you're shooting. As soon as you start to be able to see what you're shooting, your head stabilizes because it now it's got that feedback loop. But this one I think.
Do you have that, Alex? Like you have it, and
I own it.
I saw it on TikTok, and it is in my shopping cart.
The funny thing is, I saw it on TikTok too, and that's how I bought it. I didn't buy it from the TikTok store. I went to I have a tendency to look at TikTok and then I go to Amazon and just buy it because I don't understand the TikTok store. But I went, and this is exactly the one that was advertised on the TikTok store. It's nice because this little collar may seem like a minor thing here, but it bends. You can twist it so it kind of sits nicely on your neck. And then this is all kind of bendy, so you can kind of move it to a place that's comfortable. This swings down, and this hinge is key because you can swing it down and then move your phone up and down, and you can do it either vertical or horizontal. And it snaps into it. And I've used it a little bit for some tests, and my son has used it for class projects, and it's worked really well. He had to do something where he had to make a video of something that he did for a presentation, and he used it, and he said it was great. So that's another way to think. But the best one ever, in my opinion, was glass. And I'm hoping that someday we get back to something that is low key or semi low key that you can. The key with glass is I could see Google Glass. I could see an image being projected in front of me. That was what I was shooting, and that was the thing that made a massive difference for a head-mounted video. But it has to have stabilization. There's other people that have made those, but without any stabilization, it just shakes all the time, and it's really not a good viewing experience.
Craig?
That just reminded me of something, Alex. Have you actually tried to do any shots like this, cooking or whatever, using your Vision Pro?
The problem with the Vision Pro is I don't like the aspect ratio of the video. So I have played with, like, maybe I'll cover some stuff with the Vision Pro or do some stuff with it. The axial distance is nicer if you want to post it to someone else with a Vision Pro. But the squarish format is really good to send it to other people with Vision Pros, I guess. But it's relatively low resolution. I didn't find it to be a particularly enjoyable experience. I went back to my phone pretty quickly.
And then just pulling in some comments, or a comment here from Steve says, as a mountain bike rider, first-person helmet view is super valuable for previewing trails, and modern action cam stabilization is impressive. And I just wanted to go back to a minute to the head mount that Alex shared of, like, if you are doing tutorials, like that, just really making sure that it helps you to be able to even churn out more content as well. So just the productivity aspect, because if you, and I wish I had it close by, like I've got several mounts, table mounts to get that view whenever we're doing tutorials or things like that. But something like that, you can move around, and just even when you're walking and out, and we're getting into the holiday season. So if you're doing all these product reviews, and this is just one of those tools. That's why I was like so excited when you showed that. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and this skill, by the way, is really good for figuring out these tools, especially if they're low key. They're not a big deal. these skills are really useful in production, even behind the scenes. So a lot of times I have a pretty good skill of being able to use my phone, to hold it and get framing and everything else, because I've done it for so many years. And when I'm trying to explain something to somebody, sometimes I can try to write them a text, or I just sit there and just do a video and then just send them a video. like here's how to do this thing. Here's how to turn this thing over. And being able to build little tutorials. We've built lots of little videos. Like, we send out pretty complicated kits, and sometimes we want to send it with instructions. And we'll sit there with our iPhone and cut together a little video tutorial that goes out with a PDF that goes out. So we take pictures of all the steps, we shoot video of all the steps, and we send those to the person who's going to get the thing. And then we oftentimes get on the call with them too to help them. But the idea is to give them all those formats. It makes a massive difference rather than just sending them out a kit with a text-based instruction set. The video is very valuable.
Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York is asking, morning, everyone. What does the panel think of this 3D Miniconverter case? Good design, or have you found BM converters need adequate cooling to operate properly?
Craig?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's a really nice little idea. People see a use case for these, and I've got a bunch of these little Blackmagic converters and AGA converters, and I think having a way to mount them is really great. But yes, I think this is it's going to need more cooling than that. I'm surprised that there isn't venting holes on it or something just to get some airflow around it.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree. The venting is going to be a problem if you take a look at it. It looks like a good idea. It's a 3D printed. You give the measurements of your tripod, and they 3D printed for your box and your tripod. And it has this little cable management slot here on the bottom, so that you run your cables off and then through that little slot, and it kind of keeps the cable straight in a line. What I worry about is if you look right here, these are carbon fiber legs, I think. You'll notice that the scratches there from the attaching this box, and over here on this leg from attaching this box and removing it. I'd worry about scratching the carbon fiber legs, because after a while they get a little bit brittle and they can creak, and crack, and break. And I'd worry about that. They also have a picture of them stacked up like this next to each other. And that, although they do have these little round vent holes in the sides of them, that's not near enough airflow that's going to go through those little round vent holes, if that's what those are, to keep that, especially if you put a decimator box on there, they have they're aluminum cases, cast aluminum cases with heatsink fins on the side of them, and there would be not enough airflow over those heatsink fins to keep them cool. And if it gets too hot, that PLA box could start to melt, deform.
Next question.
Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma is asking, Labor Day sales galore. I found a 75-inch Toshiba LED TV for only $469 at Best Buy. Will this be large enough to act as a good digital background?
Courtney?
Yeah, maybe. Depends on your shot. Depends on how big you are, how far away the camera is, and what lens you're on. It could be okay. If you can position it further back from you than a couple of feet behind you at least, and then go on a little bit longer lens and move the camera a little further away, then you can get a little more depth of field, make it a little bit out of focus so you won't run into moire issues. But yeah, for that price, it might make a good background as long as you keep your shot fairly tight.
Alex?
Yeah, make sure it's 4K. 75 inches at 1080p, if for some reason, if that's what it is, would be problematic. You will see a lot more moire in 1080p than you will see in 4K. We found that 75 inches was our standard, so we used it a lot. So, so we were using, I think, Samsungs or whatever, but we had, or Vizios, I guess. But we had lots of 75 inches. We had some 85 inches. The 85-inch monitors we found to be a little cumbersome to move around or to operate. I had one in an insert studio, but outside of that, we didn't get any other ones that way. The 75 inches were the right mixture of portability for us, and we put them in. We built cases for them that you drop the case over top of them, and eventually built some hydraulic lifts for them. So you just pull the top off and hit a button and just go up to where they need to be. But the 75 inches worked well, but 4K is more important. It's going to be out of focus. It doesn't matter, but you get moire. So anyway, that if it's a 4K 75 inch, then 469 is probably pretty good, and you should be able to make it work.
Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts is asking, when traveling with an MV7 Plus, but without a recorder, what is the best way to record high-quality audio?
Craig?
What I would suggest, because I don't think that Zoom this is if you're using it to record something while you're doing another video chat or something. But you've got lots of options as far as even free things like Reaper, any DAW, split into that. I think you could also use, depending on your platform, QuickTime. So there's a few options like that. You just have to check the settings out and make sure you're in the highest resolution in that app.
Alexander?
Don't know what platform you're on, but if you're on a Mac, GarageBand is free. It comes with every Mac. As far as a simple application is concerned, I really like Rogue Amoeba's Audio Hijack. It is a paid application, but it is inexpensive and gives you a lot more flexibility as far as how you record audio if you want to feed certain applications into it. And it's got, it just has a really nice, easy to use interface where you just drag and drop blocks and you can connect things together and draw a line between two things and connect them. And it's just a great application. Of course, there's also open source applications too that you can use that record. I forget. I'm blanking on the name now. There's a popular open source one that's free, and it works on Windows and Mac as well. So there's all sorts of solutions.
Alex?
Not that I would use this for the mission critical stuff, but you can open up QuickTime and hit audio record, and it will see the mic. So if you have to make sure to select the mic. So if you open up QuickTime, say new audio recording, you select the mic, it's going to record an AIFF or of that file. So that's a free version of that. Rogue Amoeba is probably the one that I would use if I was going to do it on the Mac. Reaper is the one that I would use if I was looking at a cross-platform one. So I think we're all kind of in agreement in a lot of those. I will say that if it was mission critical, I would have a recorder. So whether that's the F series on the Zoom or what I carry with me is a Mix Pre 3.2 with noise assist, and I really like it. I just find that if I want to hit record, just having a button and it always works and I don't have to worry about it and it's going to be recorded there, it's pretty important to me. So if it's not mission critical, I think the Rogue Amoeba or QuickTime, if you're on the Mac, I think is going to work great. But I do find GarageBand a little cumbersome for recording. If all I'm doing is recording a voice, it's a heavy app for me. It doesn't kind of sluggish. So that'd be the only reason I wouldn't use that.
Courtney?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Alex. I would use an outboard recorder. I would not use Rogue Amoeba. And the Zoom F3 is a 2-input. It provides it provides XLR with 48-volt phantom if you need it for either of the mics. It records 32-bit float, so it records to its separate recording media so you don't have to worry about getting it out. It also forms an interface to your computer if you want to stream it live at the same time you're recording. And this way you just hit a record button, it records 32-bit float. You see the waveforms as you're recording, so you know you have a solid signal that's being laid down onto a micro SD card. So it's handy to have in that respect. And it's $300. It's not as expensive as getting a Mix Pre 3. It doesn't have noise assist, but it does have 32-bit float recording. And you can still record something on your PC or stream it if you want to over the USB connection.
Alexander?
Another mention for a dedicated recorder, I really like the audio quality on the Tascam Portacapture. This is a newer field recorder. I think they released it about a year ago. There's two different versions, the X6 and the X8. This is the smaller one, but it has XLR inputs on it, and I just find the overall quality in comparison to the H series of recorders for Zoom, these are much higher quality, just overall better sounding preamps, quieter, higher gain, and They have a really nice color touchscreen as well, so they're just overall really solid recorders.
And then Alexander, was it Audacity? Was that the tool you were trying to?
Yeah, that is exactly
suggest?
the one I was. Yeah.
Suggest before. And then just reinforcing, Alex had said it before as well, and with Alexander also reinforcing, Mickey in the comments says, my recommendation is to bring a recorder. So Francis, while you were asking without a recorder, as Alex said, if it's mission critical, please bring a recorder. Next question.
Alan Scott in Fredericton is asking, I have a Shure MVX2U USB-C interface. I need a slightly longer cable for it. Is there any benefit to using a Thunderbolt cable from it to an iMac?
Craig?
I would say no, there's not any benefit to it. You can probably do it, but I don't think there will. There are some situations where a Thunderbolt cable doesn't work as a USB-C cable, but I don't think with something like the Shure that's going to be an issue.
CJ?
Was able to confirm. I plugged in a 6-foot Thunderbolt cable to the MVX2U, and everything works fine. Phantom power is fine. Updated the firmware and everything. It is going to be a more expensive cable, so if you're thinking, the only benefit I could think is that the con is it's more expensive, but the pro is at 6 feet, that has to be a pretty robust cable in terms of build quality. So that's going to give you a nice reliable signal over there, but don't trip over it. That's an expensive one to replace.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think the only benefit is to the Apple store you bought the cable from, because they're going to make a lot more money. The audio signals for that adapter go over USB 2, so you don't need super high bandwidth. And USB 2 in a USB 2 type cable can work for you, so you can get it a lot cheaper, and you can go up to 10 feet without a problem. I think with USB 2, no problem with that bandwidth.
Next question.
This one's for me. What's the use case of flat versus dome diffuser for a light source? See image of this Aputure MC Pro mini LED panel.
Bill?
So I took a look at it. Here's a picture of what Alexander's interested in. It's really the two lights on the left. Well, you're seeing a piece of flat diffusion versus a piece of curved diffusion. To me, I would use curved diffusion if I was shooting miniatures that had faces and I wanted to get a little more light wrap around it. If either of these lights are put beyond maybe a foot or two away from the actual subject, they're going to look exactly the same. We tend to take these small lights and put them on cameras and put them 4 or 5 feet from a person just to get a little eye fill or something like that. And they all work exactly the same in those kind of things. Remember, softer light sources, which means that either broader ones or something like a dome coming out from a light, work best when they get close to the subject that you're trying to light. It smooths out the light, softens shadows and things like that, but it's that ratio of the size of the emitter versus the plane of the object you're lighting that determines whether it's going to be soft or hard. All small lights at distance are always hard. It's just how they work. And you know that because the sun is gigantic, but it's way far away and the shadows are sharp that it casts.
Jesse?
Exactly, yes. I'm going to do a quick little demo of how these apply in shoots that we do. So at the scale that you're discussing, that link you sent, domed and flat don't really make a difference. But in this situation, we're going a bit larger, and it's all on a human face. So this is a domed light, and we use this up in this kind of ski lodgy area to create a softer look. And what you're seeing here is the dome light is on the subject's left side, camera right, and we're using no fill on that. So that's the dome light and ambient light filling in the side of the face, and there's the kicker on the side of the far side of the hair. And down here we've got the exact same light, but we've put a flat mount instead of a domed mount. And what we want for this environment is something a little sharper, a little kind of more poppy, pushes you forward a bit. So you can see the difference of flat versus dome, and that's a dome with no fill, and that's a flat with a little bit of fill on the right side. So that's kind of how it plays out in real time.
Next question.
John Foltzen, Sealands Grove, Pennsylvania is asking, I send NDI signals to vMix directly IP and simultaneously to a Constellation through a hardware decoder. vMix sometimes locks up, but the hardware doesn't. It's the same network switch. vMix CPU is less than 10% and GPU is less than 20%. Any ideas where to look?
Chris?
So this is the problem with NDI. When it works, it is amazing, and it just works. And when it doesn't, trying to find where the problem is hard. So a couple things I would look at. For one, where are you getting your CPU percentages from? Are they from vMix? The vMix information is helpful, but not always completely accurate. I've noticed wide variations sometimes between what vMix reports and what the system reports. So make sure you're double checking your system. Maybe you're getting maybe there's something running on that computer that's spiking, just for a moment that kind of ties up that signal. That could be the issue. The other thing is what's encoding the signals. Two feeds should be fine, but there are some devices where multiple feeds from multiple NDI feeds from the same device really push the devices hard. So what device is that, and does that device have some capabilities to look in to see what the CPU percentage is on that device? So those are some places I'd look.
Next question.
Next question is from Chris Sabato from Albany, Oregon, here on the panel. How would you approach color balancing multiple fixed wide-angle cameras that are positioned far from the action in a challenging lighting environment?
Go ahead, Chris.
So it's many folks know I do sports at low-budget sports, and I use a lot of wide-angle fixed cameras in my broadcast because those are cheaper than people. And I really struggle with my workflow in getting all those cameras balanced. And so just to kind of give an idea, these are the angles that I have. And I'm struggling with right now. What I'm doing is basically I have one zoom camera where I zoom in on something white, get a white balance, and then try to just visually match all the other ones to that. And so I'm looking for recommendations on ways I can improve that workflow.
Jesse?
I thought you were going to answer everything, and all I would have to say is I agree. But here are the things that I would like to add to that. If you're doing multicam in a difficult environment, you absolutely want to start with all the same cameras, or at least the same maker of cameras, so you have similar chips from camera to camera, and the same manufacturer of glass, because that's where you can get your first delta between realities from camera to camera. And the other thing you want to be able to do is shade from the editing environment you're in, where you're looking at the multicams all up, and you can make minor adjustments to the cameras from that environment. You don't want to be calling down to every camera operator, can you nudge it, 56, try 52. Now try 54. You want to be able to do that yourself in a controlled environment while looking at all of the cameras compared.
Bill?
Yeah, I didn't know. I was going to say challenging lighting environment. What is that? But now that you've shown a picture, I get what you're saying. The thing that struck me looking at those four shots is one of them is almost entirely lit. It's pushed in closer on the court. The amount of light hitting your scene on that is substantially more than the others that have a big arc of crowd set in the dark, or essentially much lower light level than the other. That's going to be a challenge for me because you're really trying to balance a highly lit court with a not highly lit crowd, and so getting any kind of consistency between those things is going to be challenging for any camera, let alone a small camera. I mean, the more tilted each one of those cameras is into the crowd, the less light is going to be coming in from the highlighted zone on the bottom. And that's going to mean your aperture has to be carefully controlled. And that's also going to indicate kind of how it looks. I was thinking maybe you were in one of those circumstances like a wedding reception or something like that, where you had a lot of windows from the outside, and the direction the camera is pointing is going to have a huge impact on the color balance of each camera because it's seeing different kinds of light. That's not what you're dealing with, but all you can do is the best you can and look at those shadows, look at the highlights, make sure your exposure is the best it can be, split between the dark and the light sides, and try to find a recipe for a LUT that works for you. I'm not even sure if your cameras take LUTs, but that's my suggestion.
And Alex.
Yeah. So as far as color, assuming that you can set these cameras before you put them into place is when I color correct them. So I correct them all to each other before I get them into the field. You don't need to have them in the field to get them to all look the same. So I wouldn't do that. So figure out what your color balance, what your color temperature is. If they're set well, you should be able to actually change color spaces and still, go from 32 to 56 or anywhere in between, and they should all line up as long as they're the same number. But to be safe, you go and get the temperature that you're going to get. You can obviously use a light meter. You can also just take a piece of white paper out and hit it with auto color, auto white balance. Find out what the temperature that was given back. Don't use auto white balance. Just find out what it thinks it should be. Then you go in, you set those cameras. Now, you can use an X-Rite chart. I use a DeMont chart. The DeMont chart, I very carefully tie every camera together to make sure that they're identical to each other. Now, and I've talked about this before, but there's the way that I have a tendency to do this to reduce any. I get one camera to look the way I want it to look. Then I shoot the chart, and then I shoot the chart with all the other ones. And as I shoot those, I overlay them over top of each other, and then I tune them until they're exactly the same. And so there's a bunch of different ways. I had a tool that I used to use for this. Now I just do it with LUTs mostly, but I used to use Conduit, which is what we had, and we break that actually into red, green, and blue, and then put them over top of each other, and then do it color by color until they were all matched. So what you want to do there, though, is that you have that you tie them all together. When you lock them all together in the lab and then put them out there, the color will be the same. Of course, you need to be able to control aperture because the aperture will change between them. But you don't need to. In fact, you should not try to match color. And you may not be doing this. I'm just saying for the listeners, you should not match cameras in the field. It's like it is a recipe for deep unhappiness and lots of I don't know, it might be a little bit this way, just putting them all in front of charts and getting them together before they go out. If you go to a broadcast, a lot of times you'll see next to the truck there'll be the tent, and there's somebody doing that with the cameras, before they go into the field.
Bill?
Chris, I'd listen to everything Alex just said because it's all exceptionally good advice. I would also say, though, that it may be possible that the audience is lit, that overhead kind of orangey kind of sodium vapor or something like that is so different than the court lights, which are probably going to be high intensity and probably much closer to daylight-ish, if not higher than that. And so you're in a split lighting environment where part of your audience, part of your shot is lit with one kind of light, and the other part is lit with an entirely different light at an entirely different level. The court action obviously is where most people are going to be looking most of the time, so you want to get that balanced perfectly if you can among all the cameras. Then you have to deal with how the other people are lit. If the light is broad spectrum, and you're not going to know that because they can sometimes hang really cheap limited spectrum lights behind the court lighting, which they put much more money into, you may still have a circumstance where you're going to have to split that scene into two parts, maybe through some kind of a mat, and then try to rebalance the color of the audience differently than the court, because they could be two very different lighting profiles there.
Next question.
Next question is from Funsok Dorji in Dharamshala, India. Hi, panelists. Greetings. We are planning to do an Instagram live using an Atem Mini Pro with 2 cameras. Other than the aspect ratio, what are the other settings to keep in mind? Streaming quality? Many thanks.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so there's some basics stats. Of course, you have aspect ratio. It can take 30 or 60. I haven't tested 60 on Instagram. I will, again, after many years of making fun of 60 frames a second, I've been doing most of my productions in 60 frames a second, and I can't really go back to 30 unless I have to. 60 is a much more natural feel, but you are using up more bandwidth. So you just have to decide where you are and whether you have the bandwidth to do it. Of course, if you go to 60, you're going to want to lean 720. It's 1280 by 720 vertical format. The nominal bandwidth that you should be using for 720/30 is about 3 megs a second. If you're going to go to 60 frames a second, you should do 6 megs a second, which is at the top end of their recommendation. So you could go 6 megs a second there to get a higher quality. Definitely try to figure out whether you're actually getting 60 frames a second. It's not worth it if they're cutting them out. In fact, it's worse because you'll notice if you shoot 60 and then it streams at 30 and it's throwing every other frame away, your motion blur will be wrong. So it'll look a little it'll look a little framey. And the reason for that is that you're getting 90-degree shutters instead of 180-degree shutters, which is what you're used to looking at. So so think about that as you go through that. The other thing to think about is, so that's as far as streaming quality goes. The other thing to consider, and most, if you're using a larger camera, the other issue you'll have is if you're cropping it vertically from the Atem, one of the challenges will be that you're not quite at the right height resolution. You're at 1080 instead of 1280, so you're going to be a little bit small if you're just simply cropping in the center of it there. Restream and StreamYard both will do the service to deliver it to Instagram if you need that. But you should be able to do RTMP as well. The other thing to think about is how you're going to interact with the audience, because that's, if you're doing live Instagram, how are you going to take questions and how are you going to process those there? So that's the big thing. Beyond all the video quality is why go live. There's 3 reasons to go live. 1 is that there's breaking news. 2 is that you have sports, and 3 is that you have interactivity. If you don't have one of those 3, it's a high risk with low return.
Alexander?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the streaming thing. Now, I haven't tested Instagram, but I recently started using Restream because I actually discovered the hard way that there's a couple things. So with the Atem, because the Atem will only live stream in variable bitrate, not constant, it actually causes a problem on certain platforms. You just flat out will not get any video going into some platforms because they have very strict requirements. They'll just throw away your data. I discovered that with Twitch and LinkedIn. So with Restream, in addition to just being able to broadcast to multiple platforms, including Instagram, they offer a transcoding service that you can pay for that will conform the data to the platform's requirements so that it gets there. So you may want to check that with Instagram. And also, as far as I know, Instagram limits live streams to about an hour. So if you're planning on doing a live stream, it may just end after that. So that's another thing to think about.
And pulling in a comment here from Mickey, he says that I would encode on software with something like vMix, OBS, or higher. Going back to what Alex had said before about in addition to you using the Atem, the considerations are your safe zones. So those are however you're set up for the Instagram Live with the cameras, making sure that if you have graphics or anything that show up on the screen, knowing that you've got reactions coming up here, you've got the comments down here, and not having that information that would be expose that information or have it hidden to your audience. Then also wanting to make sure that you are, if it's going to be repurposed, what that would look like as well. And just overall the content that's showing up on the screen. Oh, and one other, we did a stream a little while ago, and if you are taking in the audience and that communication, what that looks like if you bring somebody into the stream, that now moves that up. And now what does that look like? Because typically if you're just on a mobile device, you want to have a lot of headroom, because once you bring somebody else in and they move up, so you have like your perfect picture quality there. Go ahead, Jesse.
And if you're allowed to, please do share the information of when and where this stream will happen. I'd love to keep an eye on it. And if you're able to afterwards, follow-up would be great to tell us how you built it out and what worked and what didn't.
Good call. Next question.
Tony Mobley from Noonan, Georgia. What is the panel's opinion on Zoom's AI-generated backgrounds for non-professional use? I know it's not proper for pro video production.
John?
Yeah, I would break it down as if you're going to be in virtual meetings 2 hours a day or more, a big part of your job is being a professional on camera. And you really need to have a quiet, dedicated space where you control everything about the room. Even like Chris has here today, he's got just a plain blue background, but he's in control of it. If you're not on camera 2 hours a day, then maybe you can get away with using virtual backgrounds or blurred. I've seen people in their pools. I've seen people with kids in the background. I've seen people in their bedrooms with people getting out of their beds in the background. For those cases, like, sure, put a virtual background up, or if it's you're one-off, you're in a different area than you normally are, you don't have control of the background. The nice thing about the AI backgrounds is you're not going to be violating copyright. You're not going to have watermarks in your background that you ripped off of Google Images like I've seen before. So just be careful. Control your background if you can, especially if you're on camera at least 2 hours a day.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm either in the studio or I'm on the phone. Like, I will not come in over video if I'm not here. So like, if I don't have it all set up, I'm just like, if I'm out of my office and I'm jumping into a call, I'm going to come in over the phone, and I'll dial in and do audio only, but I will not. I'm not willing to go down that path anymore. Like, it's just not, to me. I add more. I'd rather just talk, because it's not going to be video worth looking at. So why do it? So that's, it just adds more cognitive load to people who you're talking to.
And Courtney.
Yeah, I hate the virtual backgrounds. It's not because of the content of the background. It's because of the keying. And you'll see it with people that'll have a microphone, especially if you have a microphone like you do, Tony, in the set that doesn't move. It figures out what to key the background over and what not to by what's moving. So if the pixels aren't moving, like if your microphone is stationary, it a lot of times will punch a hole where that microphone is. And it's so distracting to be watching someone with a hole in their chest, or it's intruding. The shape of their head keeps changing as it tries to figure out are those headphones in his head, or is that should that be part of the background? So if you are going to use a virtual background, let's say you're shooting in the men's room of the local Greyhound bus station, and you don't want to show what's in the background, get a pop-up green screen. And if you put a pop-up green screen, even if you don't light it, even if it's not lit, that green screen will help the program. And there's a place in there where it says, I have a green screen. We'll check that box, put the green screen behind you. And then you can lay any AI-generated virtual background in over the back, and you won't have that problem of the amorphous keying of yourself over that background that is constantly distracting to see it coming and going, and see your ear disappear and come back and disappear and come back. So it'll use the green to do the key, and it won't be jumping around all the time.
So, Tony, generative AI backgrounds on Zoom for non-professional use, go have at it, because there are a lot of people who are using Zoom for bridal showers, for different kinds of parties, and to be able, you can even make a game out of it. So definitely, and for those who are unfamiliar, that Zoom now, you can just use prompts and it will generate a virtual background for you. So for non-professional use, to have fun, it could be some kind of community builder with a team or with family members and friends. Definitely have at it, and have fun. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, what was a major chain multiplex closed in 22? A local group has been purchased. No word on food, beer, or wine, but they announced the 4 largest theaters will be Atmos, and all seats will have heated recliners. Have you heard of any similar projects?
John?
Yeah, we have something similar in our movie theaters here in Reno. We had 7 or 8 theaters. They were all run by one of the big mega screen companies. And then a small theater that has about 15 screens across the Western U.S. came in. And just the fact that there's competition now caused all the theaters to be cleaner. They're more available. You can do reserved seating at every single theater in town now. So it was overall a good thing for us.
Bill?
Probably the biggest industry that was hit hardest by the pandemic was local theaters, because obviously they had a year and a half or something like that with very little revenue, and most of them didn't make it. I'm talking about the smaller kind of independent chains. They were all caught up. I know that one here, we had a little place called Edwards Cinema that had maybe 15 or 8 screens, I can't remember what it was, around us. And they used to be kind of the leading edge of, they had iMacs, they had RPX, they had ScreenX, they had all these interesting formats. You could go watch the movie and they would have spread it on the walls of the theater that you were watching it in. And they didn't make it. They got bought out by Regal, one of the larger chains. They haven't changed any of the projection, but I just think there was a lot of disruption in that. So your experience is not unusual with these less financially stable companies getting kind of absorbed in bigger ones after that huge financial hit.
Courtney?
Yes, even in Hollywood, the film capital of the southwestern United States, was hit hard by the pandemic and by closures. ArcLight Cinema maybe is the chain you were thinking of. All the ArcLight theaters here in Hollywood went bankrupt, I think, in 2020. Some of them sold and reopened. They're the ones that own the Cinerama Dome, which is a fairly famous hotspot in Hollywood. They had 13 theaters in addition to the Dome, or 14 theaters. They're all closed. They have not reopened. ArcLight was bought out on a venue by venue basis. It was bought out and operated by other people. Regal bought out some of them. They're the ones that ran the ones that Culver City, Culver Cinema in Culver City is the one that Alex and I went to that now has the giant Samsung Onyx screens, LED screens in. So that was an ArcLight theater. So they improved that quite a bit. It's one of the few places you can get HDR cinema that's true HDR. And although that's changing, there's new HDR projection coming down the pike that will be out soon. But those and Pacific Theaters is another big chain on the West Coast that went bankrupt and was then taken over by AMC. And a lot of those had one of the reasons they went bankrupt is they'd just gone in and retrofitted all of their theaters with these fancy new projection with Dolby projection and IMAX projection, and the seats that move back and forth, 4D they call it, and those are just too expensive to maintain, especially during the pandemic when they closed down all the theaters. They still had to pay off all that debt service, so a lot of them declared bankruptcy, so it was bad. But some of them have been taken over by Regal, who was also in bankruptcy, and Regal closed down a number of their theaters. They supposedly put their money into rehabbing a lot of those special venues that have the widescreens, the Dolby projection, and the IMAX projection.
Alex?
And Vic said that this is the Regal closing that got bought by a local group and updated. The theaters have to figure out what they're doing next. It's probably not going to be 18 plexes, of movies. So they have to either consolidate and make their theaters better, or they need to find something else to put in the theaters. But they're not going to be able to put film into it. I mean, they're not the market of. We had 18 screens or 12 screens because we had lots of things that now end up on streaming. So it just doesn't, the 18 plexes and the 16 plexes don't pencil out anymore. And so most likely what will be left is either they're going to find other things to put into the screens, or they're going to, the ones that have the highest quality experience, because you can still charge a little bit more. Like, the problem is it's so expensive to go to the theater. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter where you go. Like, I'm always going to go to the nicest theater I can find, and for me, it's typically an IMAX. I love Dolby Cinema, but the lights, they added lights, at least to the one in Metreon. There's little lights that go down the side that are blue, and I can see them on the screen, and I can't unsee them, and I can't go. Now I literally can't go to a Dolby Cinema. I don't know what the thought process was there. The IMAX screens are so big, they have lights too, but they're warm and they're so far away that I don't notice them on the screen. And so that's the only place I can only watch things on IMAX at this point. And because of this weird little detail that goes up the side of the steps. So anyway, but I think that, so a lot of the theaters, I mean, I think that being able to get your own seat, I think everyone expects at this point. I mean, no one goes to a general admission theater that I know of anymore. But being able to have the highest quality, and we've talked about this, many of us in the industry that deal with theaters a lot have talked about the fact that the front section of the theater should just be eliminated. It should just be a big wide open area. You can let people lay down there, but you should not sell seats there. Like you should not sell like the first 10 rows right against the screen. Like, I mean, maybe you can put them, they're there, but no one should really, you should never look at a theater. I see people do that by choice, like sit down there, like 2 rows away from an iMac screen. I'm like, what are you going to see there? So anyway, but leave that open for something else, but not screens, and really build a core number of every seat is actually a good seat, which would be a lot less seats. And I think that's where we're seeing this slow progression towards, because if you're going to spend all that money, the problem is you're competing with what we just talked about, 75-inch screens, and we're competing with really good sound systems at home, and the fact that it's a lot less expensive. So I think that's the real challenge that the theaters have. They have to have a reason to go.
And Courtney?
In fact, I'm going to a movie in just a couple of hours here at the Real Sherman Oaks, and this is how they've handled it. You can see the showtimes here. The Crow, that's a really old movie, so they're bringing back movies on their 20th anniversary. Also, you can see a movie in Hindi, Stree 2, so they're diversifying their screens to show foreign language and foreign produced films that don't really get distribution here in the United States. There's another one down here that's in Tagalog. So they're serving here. Serendipo Thora. Anyway, I can't even pronounce that, but they do serve a multilingual market here, and that's a way. Since their digital projection, they can get that DCI in and throw it up on the screen. It doesn't cost them very much, and they can still keep those screens busy and serve a stratified market.
And Nigel.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that Crow is a remake of a new movie, not a re-release, not a great set of reviews for that. We had a small chain. There's one in Austin called The Violent Crown, which has 3 or 4 screens on it. It's downtown. It's easily walkable. It's not the best projection. It's not the best sound, but it's really a great place to watch an art house or a small distribution movie, except they no longer can get art house or small distribution movies. Those things have all disappeared to streaming, and so now they're showing the major box office, Wolverine and Deadpool stuff, and we haven't been back since. And I think the saddest thing of COVID to me was the destruction of that sort of low-end art house movie at a theater.
Next question.
Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma is asking, when editing 4K 60p in Final Cut Pro, I find that my hard drive fills up really fast. How can I configure FCP to utilize external SSDs for all of its storage needs?
Bill?
I have to do this really fast because I know we're close. First of all, Final Cut works in an unusual way. Whatever the original footage is, it sequesters that, and then if it's not in a format it understands, like ProRes or something else, it will transcode to original media on your drive so that there are no missing frames it has to calculate. And then you have a further proxy footage that is a smaller version for quick editing, even if the footage is large. Understand that process. Understand that when you bring in footage, how you shot it determines how much storage space it's going to use eventually. You can, if you have the original footage, dump all the files after you finished working with them on the other transcodes, and that will be the smallest thing you have to back up because it can always calculate them. It'll be a cost in time, but not a cost in storage. There are some other things, but I don't have enough time to go into the depth of this.
Jesse?
And if you're working off of proxies, you might not need to be playing back off of SSDs. You might be able to get some cheaper storage media if you're using lower res, lower frame rate. Well, not lower frame rate, just lower res proxies.
Well, we have a fantastic week scheduled for you here on Office Hours. As we get into, on Tuesday, we'll have layout and design with Patrick Smith. So if you are looking to really up your design skills, you want to be sure to join us again tomorrow, same time, same place. On Wednesday, we've got mix preparation. So if you are looking, what do you need to prepare for your mixes? We'll be talking about that that on Wednesday. And on Thursday, NLE plugins and extensions right here. We'll be doing plugins and their capabilities in the software application and how that allows you to really manage your workflows. And on Friday, we've got home studio from beginner to broadcast. So as usual, Saturday, Q&A, so we definitely want you to be back there. And if you want to be a part of the community and learning how you can participate in office hours, we have our volunteer meetings on Saturdays. And I almost forgot to mention extra hours tonight. So if you haven't seen that show, you want to tune in, and you get extra time with our office hours community. And for this schedule and the rest of the schedule for the week, all you've got to do is head over to officehours.global. And of course, producers, as we get ready to jump into the next hour, remember to vote up and down your questions for the show. And